From the Gray Man Briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more.
For the third quarter of 2025, this is Update 12 to the Gray Man Briefing summary of recent developments. Across the country, an illegal immigrant supporter attempted to ram law enforcement during a traffic stop involving Border Patrol in Maine. In Washington, LGBT and pro-Palestinian protesters disrupted a Christian rally, while in Oregon, Antifa targeted an ICE facility. In D.C., pro-Palestinian soldiers, U.S. Army soldiers, disrupted a Senate hearing. Protest escalated against a National Guard deployment. The White House Peace Vigil was dismantled and restored, and dismantled again. Codepink disrupted a cabinet dinner, and students staged anti-Trump demonstrations. In Puerto Rico, activists protested outside a U.S. airbase. In Georgia, a judge dismissed RICO charges against Cop City far-left extremists. In Illinois, protesters blocked access to an ICE facility. In Utah, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated by the boyfriend of a transgender. We'll provide the latest updates in that investigation. Also in Utah, LGBT and socialist activists rallied at the Capitol, and a trans militia group deactivated. Later, an explosive device was discovered under a Fox News affiliate media vehicle in Salt Lake City. In North Carolina, UNC's campus was vandalized with pro-Palestinian graffiti. In Idaho, a fight broke out at a Kirk vigil, leading to arrest. In Arizona, a man was arrested for vandalizing a Kirk memorial, and a public memorial was scheduled for around 70,000 attendees for Kirk. In Tennessee, the National Guard is set to deploy to Memphis to combat crime. In New York, police issued threat alerts during Trump's 9/11 appearance at Yankee Stadium. Data shows that California, Pennsylvania, Florida, New York, Texas, Tennessee, and Ohio have all experienced increased attacks against Christian churches, part of a broader pattern recorded across 43 states. On a national level, conservative movement momentum surged after Kirk's assassination, with millions of new social media followers and tens of thousands of new Turning Point USA chapter requests nationwide. Several NFL teams declined to honor Kirk, and teachers and doctors glorified his killing. The FTC warned Big Tech not to adopt EU content moderation standards. Starlink experienced a nationwide outage. A Senate amendment requiring the DOJ to release Epstein documents failed after Republicans voted it down. The State Department warned foreign visa holders who praised Kirk's killing that they could face revocation. An AP investigation revealed that U.S. tech companies supplied hardware and services to China's surveillance mechanism. Outside the U.S., Nepal's social media ban sparked violent protest, resulting in dozens killed, hundreds injured, and the Prime Minister's resignation, followed by an overthrow of the government. Let's begin today with government oversight. On September 11th, the Deputy Secretary of State warned that foreign visa holders or applicants who glorify, rationalize, or make light of Charlie Kirk's assassination risk visa denial or revocation. He stated that foreigners promoting violence are not welcome visitors and directed consular officials to take appropriate actions. The move shows the State Department's willingness to use immigration authority against online speech tied to political violence. Critics warn terms like praise or making light of are broad and could impact lawful expression by foreign nationals. Analysts also raise concerns that such steps might indirectly suppress citizen speech. On September 12th, President Trump announced the deployment of the National Guard to Memphis, Tennessee, citing concerns over crime. He stated that the governor and the mayor both supported the move. The mayor later stepped back that support. Trump compared the deployment to past interventions in Washington, D.C., and indicated other cities, including Chicago, could be considered next. He emphasized choosing Memphis because, according to him, the leaders there endorsed that federal involvement. The announcement highlighted the administration's willingness to use military support for domestic law enforcement missions. On September 10th, the U.S. Senate voted 51 to 49 to block an amendment requiring the Justice Department to release all unclassified Jeffrey Epstein documents within 30 days. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer introduced a measure during debate on the annual defense bill, bypassing Republican leadership. All Democrats supported the amendment, along with two Republicans, Josh Hawley and Rand Paul. Republican leaders opposed it overall, arguing the amendment politicized the NDAA, that's the National Defense Authorization Act, and that the DOJ had already made sufficient disclosures. The amendment's failure keeps many Epstein-related documents and records from mandatory public release. Shifting into censorship, let's look at that situation in Nepal. From September 4th to the 9th, Nepal blocked 26 major social media platforms, including Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Reddit, and Signal, after the companies failed to register under the country's new rules. TikTok and Viber were able to stay online. Demonstrators used those along with VPNs to organize mass protests. Crowds set fire to Parliament, major complex there, Prime Minister's residence, the presidential palace, and homes of political leaders. At least 22 people were killed in the first few days, and hundreds more injured when police opened fire on demonstrators. The Prime Minister there resigned, but protests continued as anger expanded beyond censorship to covering both corruption and inequality. Government officials had to be evacuated by helicopter while the army called for dialogue and signaled it was ready to intervene. The government lifted the social media ban on September 9th, but unrest persisted. Since those widespread youth protests erupted after that social media ban, Nepal's prime minister, of course, as we said, resigned, parliament was resolved, and the former chief justice was appointed as the interim female prime minister. At least 72 people have now died and over 2,000 were injured in that unrest. The interim government has pledged reforms, compensation for victims, and nationwide elections to be held on March 5th of 2026. Moving on, the Federal Trade Commission issued a warning to major U.S. tech companies, including Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple. The FTC cautioned them not to apply European Union content rules such as the Digital Services Act in ways that undermine free expression or encryption rights in the U.S. The agency stressed that U.S. users remain under the First Amendment protections and must not be subjected to foreign censorship demands. Okay, let's move now into the civil unrest briefing, and I'll warn you up front, there is a lot to cover here. We're going to kind of skip around, and this time I'll be reading most of it straight from the Gray Man briefing. In Washington, Maine, on August 25th, a box truck crashed on Route 17, prompting state police to call the Border Patrol after the driver, who's from Colombia, and 4 other illegal immigrants were discovered in the truck. During the response, a 24-year-old white female attempted to drive her vehicle into a state trooper and a Border Patrol captain. The officer drew his firearm as she accelerated toward them before swerving away and fleeing. After a short pursuit, she was arrested when her vehicle left the road and charged with reckless conduct with a dangerous weapon, criminal threatening with a dangerous weapon, various other charges. A review of her social media shows her profile banner is an LGBT flag with an overlay of the Black Lives Matter raised fist icon. In Seattle, Washington, on August 30th, a permitted, they have a permit, Christian worship rally organized by the group Let Us Worship was held at Gasworks Park as part of a national tour. Antifa, pro-Palestinians, and LGBT protesters carrying air horns and kazoos disrupted the event. The protesters waved Palestinian and Pride Progress flags. In Portland, Oregon, on September 1st, Antifa and anti-ICE rioters gathered with shields and other equipment to attack an ICE facility. In Washington, D.C., on September 3rd, pro-Palestinian uniformed U.S. Army soldiers disrupted U.S. Senate proceedings. This happened during the Foreign Relations Committee confirmation hearing. The two shouted and entered the chambers, accusing lawmakers of complicity in genocide in Gaza. Also in D.C., on September 6th, 5,000 marched to protest President Trump's deployment of National Guard troops and federal agents, calling it a military occupation. Demonstrators rallied under slogans including "We Are All DC" and "Free DC," and warning that the presence of troops could expand to Baltimore and Chicago. The chief of organizing for CASA told the crowd that immigrant and working-class families had seen loved ones deported just days earlier and warned the community would not be silenced. Separately, Free D.C. and No Kings protests persisted daily in D.C., with much of the protesters traveling from states across the country to resist the perceived overreach to combat crime. Separately, Trump ordered the removal of the White House Peace Vigil, a makeshift blue tent protest that had been standing in the area since 1981. The vigil was staffed 24/7 by volunteers, and they called for global nuclear disarmament. It's considered one of the longest running protests in U.S. history. Also in D.C., Codepink, an anti-Trump activist, disrupted a cabinet member's dinner that was attended by both President Trump, Vance, Hegseth, Rubio, and others. During the disruption, they chanted messages such as "Free D.C., Free Palestine," and "Trump is the Hitler of our time." Also, students from Georgetown, Howard, George Washington, and other universities staged protests in D.C., objecting to federal police control, campus detainments, and perceived threats to institutional autonomy and diversity. In Puerto Rico on September 7th, pro-Venezuelan and anti-Trump activists protested outside an Air National Guard base to oppose the base's utilization by the U.S. Navy's Iwo Jima Amphibious Readiness Group, currently deployed for anti-narco-terrorism operations. Nationwide, some conservative events had been canceled or rescheduled for safety reasons following that fatal shooting of Kirk, including a planned book event with Ben Shapiro at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. However, Shapiro responded saying that rumors of him canceling his college tour were false and he planned to expand college visits in Kirk's honor. In Atlanta, Georgia, a judge plans to dismiss RICO charges against 61 far-left extremists involved in riots and encampments against the Atlanta Police and First Responder Training Facility they call Cop City, citing improper authority by the Attorney General. As required, gubernatorial approval was not obtained. However, domestic terrorism and arson charges against at least 5 defendants remain possible. In Utah, following the assassination of Kirk, students gathered for vigils and rallies in his support. Far-left counter-protesters disrupted many of those events. Some escalated into physical altercations, requiring police intervention. In Portage, Michigan, on September 12th, an employee at Office Depot refused to print a poster for a vigil for a customer due to the image being of Charlie Kirk with the years 1993 to 2025 written on it. Office Depot released a statement apologizing, saying the employee was fired. In Broadview, Illinois, anti-ICE, Antifa, and LGBT protesters blocked the road outside of a local ICE facility, preventing law enforcement from entering or exiting. A special response team deployed to clear the driveway so federal vehicles could enter. Protesters shouted and yelled at the agents during the operation while waving LGBT flags and holding pro-illegal immigration signage. In Salt Lake City, Utah, on September 6th, LGBT and socialist activists gathered at the steps of the state capitol during the Great Salt Lake People's Summit. The event included members of the Democratic Socialist of America, or DSA, LGBT right groups, and People's Power, along with other progressive and far-left organizations. DSA members distributed handbills for a salting program aimed at linking individuals to union organizing. A DSA speaker called for a broader socialist movement to address workplace struggles, deportations, LGBT rights, and global injustices, such as the conflict in Palestine, saying, this is a quote, "What's it going to take for you to fight? When we fight, we win." The rally also emphasized themes of solidarity and radical love, connected to the upcoming Utah Pride Festival, with rainbow flags and immigrant rights signage visible at the event. Unconfirmed and unreliable conservative voices claim that Kirk's assassin attended that rally. In Chapel Hill, NC, pro-Palestinians vandalized UNC's campus and they used red and black paint with slogans including "I told you, I love you, and now I need freedom." The phrases referenced a previous removed student mural or vandalism, quoting June Jordan, who wrote a pro-Palestinian poem. In Boise, Idaho, on September 10th, a vigil was held at the Idaho State Capitol for Charlie Kirk. During the gathering, an armed counter-protester, who was a Black Lives Matter activist, was wearing a rainbow backpack. He shouted, "Fuck Charlie Kirk," multiple times toward the crowd. In response, a Kirk supporter confronted the man, leading to a physical altercation. The man was assaulted and knocked to the ground by the BLM activist. He was then kicked and struck before standing, and then the Kirk supporter retaliated. Video shows some attendees chanting "USA, USA," while others tried to stop the two from fighting. Police and bystanders broke up the confrontation. Both men were arrested. The BLM man was found carrying a concealed firearm and marijuana and charged with disturbing the peace, carrying a concealed weapon under the influence, and possession of marijuana. Nationwide, the conservative movement has gained support following Kirk's assassination. Kirk's TikTok grew about 2 million new followers. His Instagram added 3.5 million. Turning Point USA's, which is Kirk's conservative outreach and political organization, their YouTube grew by 370,000, their TikTok by 100,000, Facebook by 2 million. Vigils and rallies have been documented in at least 25 states, along with the UK, Australia, and other countries, with more than 500,000 attending. A public memorial is scheduled at State Farm Stadium in Arizona, where up to 70,000 are expected to attend. Turning Point USA had approximately 3,500 chapters at colleges and high schools prior to his assassination. By September 12th, 32,000 high schools and colleges submitted requests to form new chapters. Workers across various professions in the U.S. and Mexico have been fired, suspended, or resigned after making negative remarks about Kirk. More than 60,000 people have been added to a database that tracks extremist threats and glorification of violence related to Kirk. The NFL has become a focal point for determining public sentiment for high-profile events. NFL home teams that opted not to honor Kirk were the Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, Detroit Lions, Indianapolis Colts, LA Raiders, and the Minnesota Vikings, all of which previously honored George Floyd and at least 2 other persons alleged to have been victims of police brutality. In Phoenix, Arizona, on September 14th, a man was arrested for vandalizing a memorial for Kirk. He wore the same shirt design as the accused assassin did, and his mother appears to be an assistant principal at a public school. In Utah, a trans militia group, Armed Queers Salt Lake City, deactivated its social media on September 10th. The far-left LGBT group provides firearm training to militants to defend trans rights. So the Gray Man Briefing also provides an analysis and a takeaway on all these direct actions and protests. We can't cover all that right here. I've read as much as I possibly can for now, but if you want to see all this, go to graymanbriefing.com for more. Let's look now at commercial oversight. An Associated Press investigation found that several major U.S. technology companies supplied hardware and software used in China's state-run surveillance programs. Firms identified were IBM, Dell, Microsoft, Intel, NVIDIA, Oracle, and Cisco. Their products included advanced chips, network infrastructure, and cloud services incorporated into systems that monitored and detained Uyghurs and other minority groups. This disclosure underscores the risks of American technologies enabling authoritarian control and raises questions about oversight of exports. Let's look at terrorism now. On September 11th, in New York City, law enforcement circulated alerts of a credible threat. The suspect in this threat was carrying a rifle, and they advised that he said he would shoot officers on site and told fire department and police to make sure they travel in pairs and request immediate backup if approached. This event occurred while President Trump was in the city attending the Yankees 9/11 memorial ceremony. Let's look now over in Salt Lake City on September 14th. Law enforcement found an improvised explosive, later described as an incendiary device, under a news media vehicle. This was a Fox News affiliate vehicle. It was parked outside of an occupied building. The device was lit or activated, but it failed and did not detonate. 2 men, Adib Nasir and Adil Nasir, were arrested. Nasir was charged with 2 counts of weapons of mass destruction, along with 2 counts of terrorism threats. A search of their residence uncovered explosives, components, 2 hoax WMDs, firearms, narcotics, and hazardous materials. The FBI assisted with the warrant, and neighboring homes were evacuated as a precaution. Motive for targeting the media vehicle has not yet been disclosed, and the specific device was not immediately clarified. Looking now at communications. On September 15th, Starlink had a nationwide outage. Down detector showed a sharp spike in error reports. The cause was later attributed to a problem with the network's internal software services. Prior outages were linked to software failures and environmental factors. Starlink had global outages back in July and a regional disruption in August. And now looking at the major crime briefing. On September 10th, Charlie Kirk was fatally shot in the neck during an outdoor event at Utah Valley University while speaking to a crowd of about 3,000 people. The shot came, according to authorities, from a rooftop about 430 feet away. The suspect, Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, was identified about 2 days later after his father recognized him in surveillance videos and turned him in. He was arrested in St. George, Utah. Forensic evidence links Robinson to the crime. DNA from a towel wrapped around the rifle and a screwdriver recovered at the scene match his, and bullet casings that were recovered bore engraved messages reflecting transgender and anti-fascist ideology. Before or around the time of the killing, he allegedly wrote a note, sent texts, and confessed in a Discord group expressing intent to kill Kirk. Authorities believe this was an ideologically motivated attack. Robinson is being held without bail and faces state felony charges. Let's look over a series of updates from the Gray Man briefing that came out in real time. So I'm just going to read these kind of in part, and we'll start with this one. Kirk was shot approximately 12 seconds after answering the question, quote, "Do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years? Kirk replied, "Too many." A Mauser 30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle was found nearby in the woods along with prints. FBI and Utah DPS are co-leading the investigation. Trump condemned the attack as heinous and announced Kirk would receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Vigils across the country were disrupted by counter-protesters, and the far left celebrated online. According to a leaked ATF document, the weapon was wrapped in a towel with a top-fed magazine. 3 unfired rounds and 1 chambered cartridge were discovered. The cartridges bore engravings with pro-transgender and Antifa messages. Charging documents describe the engravings as, quote, "Notices bulge, OWO, what's this?" And that one was written on the spent casing. Another says, "Hey fascist, catch," with arrow symbols, which are in reference to a video game implying vile things to be destroyed. Another one says, "Oh Bella Ciao," part of a song used by Antifa in the far left. "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO," said another casing. Analysts noted points of contention in the investigation, so I'm just going to read some of these here. A black mark moving on Kirk's chest, which is likely the clip-on microphone dislodging. A ring shifting on his left hand on one of his fingers. It moved supposedly from his ring finger to his pinky. So he wears a hinged ring, so it has an opening on the back. It can fall off, come off, and in other videos you can see him adjusting it, so that's likely what was happening here. There's also debate over whether the shooter carried the rifle when jumping off the roof and how did the rifle get to the woods. So if you look at the video, he is carrying a stiff object wrapped in a cloth, so that's likely his firearm. Analysts indicate a bullet struck the top edge of body armor or plate wore under Kirk's shirt. It then deflected up into his neck. There are a lot of unsubstantiated claims by online personalities. One says that Kirk got shot from his right side. There's no evidence that appears to support that theory. Other conspiracies include observances of persons standing nearby to Kirk who are claimed to be making odd gestures or signals prior to the shot. This is also unsubstantiated. These just appear to be normal movements, or they look abnormal given the situation in slow motion videos. There are claims that a man standing to Kirk's right had a handgun hidden under his crossed arm, and that he blind fired without looking and kept a gun hidden from 3,000 people and all cameras. Nothing reliable to that claim either. Separately, a screwdriver was found. It looks like it may have been used to either break down or assemble the weapon, probably to assemble it. Maybe he carried part of it in his backpack and then assembled it on the roof. The FBI confirmed Robinson was living with a transgender partner in St. George and was in a romantic relationship with that person. That partner is cooperating with investigators, or at least they say he is, and he is a biological male that is attempting to transition into a female. A relative of that transgender roommate alleged that the individual, quote, hates conservatives and Christians, end quote, and that he influenced Robinson's radicalization. The FBI confirmed DNA hits linking Robinson to the towel and to the screwdriver and cited digital footprints and family statements as clear evidence of an ideology, a far left ideology. At least 20 people were involved in a Discord group that discussed the shooting and discussed Kirk with that suspect. On Discord, it appears the suspect confessed to the shooting. So we're going to stop there and move on. Also note, you can read all this in detail. You don't have to have me read it out to you. You can see the media content the Gray Man Briefing has shared. So go to graymanbriefing.com if you want this direct. And up next here in Major Crime, hostilities toward Christian churches in the U.S. has increased sharply. The Family Research Council reported 50 incidents in 2018 compared to 415 in 2024, more than a seven-fold rise. From 2018 to 2024, there were 1,384 total incidents, including vandalism, arson, bomb threats, gun-related attacks, and disruptions. In 2024 specifically, 284 of the 415 involved vandalism, 55 were arson, 14 were bomb threats, and 28 were gun-related. Incidents affected 383 Christian churches in 43 states, with the highest concentrations in California, Pennsylvania, Florida, New York, Texas, Tennessee, and Ohio. Motives varied, with some tied to abortion activism, LGBT issues, or political hostility, though many were unclear. And that's going to be it for this week's summary of recent developments. Remember that these briefings are delivered in real time to Gray Man Briefing subscribers on Telegram, Signal, and via email. Thanks for listening, and as always, remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.